Welcome to our series on how government agencies are accelerating innovation with data and analytics. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and we're here today with Jacquie Rush, Vice President for Strategic Initiatives at Smartronix. Jacquie, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Wyatt, so much for this opportunity. Looking very much forward to this.
Well, let me start by asking, what makes a data-led migration to the cloud? That is, where agencies can migrate and analyze data in the clouds. What makes that different from migrating applications and other workloads to the cloud?
That's a really good question, Wyatt. A lot of times people think about just going to the cloud as just getting to an end state, right? The cloud is the goal. Let's just move it. And data-led migrations are very, very different from that. If you think a lot about the last 18 months, like that's the best way to explain it is through an analogy, right? With COVID. So many things happened in the last 18 months that were very unpredictable, and the types of decisions that people were having to make, the types of impacts that had been anticipating, the risks that they were mitigated were completely turned on a dime. Right. So to be able to have like requirements and to know exactly what that end state looks like, data is really at the core, the key to answering business questions and being able to respond on a dime. And that elasticity that the cloud brings, that ability to be flexible, the ability to respond on a dime to a changing environment is very different than, let's say, a traditional OLTP or application that you would just move to the cloud, right? Because it's very business driven, and the technology really has to take a back seat to the actual types of questions that you're answering. And it has to become more of an enabler than anything rather than the spotlight. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I look at the differences between data-led migrations and just normal. At the core, it's just really the responsiveness that's required for the types of changing dynamics that happen in a business.
No, that absolutely does make sense. Maybe next, can you talk to us about an example where the efforts of a public sector customer to migrate and analyze multiple data sets to the cloud actually led to new insights and innovations in serving their organization's constituents?
Within the Department of State, we work with an initiative that supports PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Relief Plan for AIDS relief, right? And in there are several PEPFAR countries that are mostly within Africa and Latin America that really their goal is to eliminate the AIDS epidemic through testing and treatment. And so when we were actually rolling out this initiative to create collaboration where the countries could work with the ministries of health and the different organizations that are responsible for helping them understand who is positive, how do they treat that positivity and where people stand, they were really struggling with being able to get the data in the right hands of the right people at the right time. So when we actually came up with this initiative to move them to the cloud to allow this collaboration where they could actually what we call bring their own data, right? So before the only data that they had at their hands were any types of data that people would put in an Excel file and email to them. So we all know what that's like, right? Like finding that Excel file, having the different versions, the collaboration where you're like, wait, mine's frozen and mine's a different version and I see different numbers, right? Moving them to an environment that in real time when they were in a meeting and they actually had people at the table, they could bring up the numbers, they could bring data from different sources into like a technical term, an S3 bucket, and acquire new sources to actually collaborate around it. There was one country in particular, the Republic of Congo, that was performing really poorly and they couldn't figure out why. When we brought them into the system and we were able to actually, work with them, mentor them, get this up and running, they actually became one of the top performing countries in the mission. So that really shows the power of data, the power of putting data at the right time in the right hands for the right people and to allow them to collaborate to solve problems.
I appreciate your sharing that example. Next, let's talk a little bit about how does working with AWS and its partner community, with firms like yours, for example, how does that speed up the time to value for public sector customers in improving constituent services?
There's really basically two ways that I would like to look at that question, right? So there's the technical part. So AWS is an innovator. So, when we were talking about these concepts, like even 6-7 years ago, to collaborate around data, to bring your own data, all of those things, there weren't a lot of technologies out there that were flexibly supporting that type of initiative. And what really is amazing about the ways in which AWS engages with partners is they come to the table ready to win. and they bring technologies to the table that are digestible for us, that are implementable for us, and they bring the right support to the table in order to make sure that we're successful. So their innovation in technology is one thing that really helps us bring value to our customers. And the other part is just the ease at which it is to work with them. They really want us to be successful, and they have a presence in most of our accounts, right? But their desire is to understand what the client needs, what we need, and to be that support, as opposed to just trying to point fingers or say that it's not the technology. They really bring to the table a partnership between us and our customers and them. And those two things, their drive for innovation and their just desire to be easy to work with, really help us come to the market pretty quickly.
Mhm. Well, lastly, Jackie, how have the efforts of migrating and analyzing data to the cloud, again, this idea of a data-led migration, how has that changed your customers' cloud strategies or their priorities about working in the cloud?
The biggest way that I can see that this has really changed is there is an inherent, when you do a true data-led migration, there is an inherent transformation that happens in the organization. There is just a real ability to drive the business through data and to get it to the hands. So what ends up happening is once you're able to do these data-led migrations and that transformation happens, that cultural shift, that's the biggest thing that I see, is that data-led migrations really allow a collaboration between the technologists and the business people, right? And so when that cultural paradigm changes, when that transformation happens and that the culture of really collaborating around an application to drive the business happens, there's this opening to understand, how can we do this in other places? How can we make this cultural change impact in other parts of the business? And I think that that's where I'm uniquely and very proud that I'm able to do that, because I see that on the constant in the types of implementations that we're doing.
Mhm. Well, Jackie Rush, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to share some of your insights about data-led migrations and how it's helping your customers in the public sector at large.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for your time. I appreciate it, Wyatt.